Wouldn't it be nice to have several thought leaders in your industry know and love your brand? Start a podcast. Invite your industry's thought leaders to be guests on your show and start reaping the benefits of having a network full of industry influencers. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles, Director of Partnerships here at Sweetfish Media. I am joined today by Dan Faggella. He is CEO and founder at Emerj. Dan, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Logan. Glad to be here with you.
Oh, we are glad to have you. Dan, we're going to be blowing through some of the hype around AI and really talking today about who should be considering AI, and if so, how, and really who should be ignoring some of the hype around AI. As we get into this, I would love to have you share with listeners why you're the guy that's talking about this. Give us a little bit about your background and maybe what you and the team at Emerj are up to these days.
Yeah, totally. So Emerj is a market research platform focused specifically on the business applications of AI and machine learning. So we mostly focus on the big industries, Logan. We focus on banking, insurance, pharmaceutical, retail, big kind of $1 trillion sectors. And we help kind of C-level executives make smarter decisions about picking vendors, smarter decisions about kind of adopting and adapting to artificial intelligence trends and sort of making the most of their strategy. So we do a lot of custom research and reports for large companies, but we also do thought leadership with smaller firms and kind of bigger research reports with international organizations, like, let's say the World Bank, for example. So we've done a lot of speaking for the United Nations and World Bank and most recently National Defense University down in Washington, D.C. So we kind of hang in the public sector as well. Basically, the gist, Logan, is helping leaders make sense of the cutting edge of AI. And so research is our game, and AI is all that we do.
I love it. Well, let's jump right in because we've got a lot of B2B sales and marketing leaders that listen to this show. And as you mentioned, you're helping leaders make better decisions, and AI is in their faces and in their ears quite a bit these days. So let's start with, who really should be not thinking about AI as much, who is kind of almost, I don't want to say disqualified, but where's the sector before we get into if you're a good fit and how, where's a portion where folks could maybe ignore some of the hype these days, you think?
Yep. So I think the biggest sort of bubble of, let's say, bloviated claims around artificial intelligence tends to, in my opinion, be in sort of the small business space. So there's a lot of articles, if you read Forbes or you read Wired or you read TechCrunch, and by no means are these articles written by folks that intend harm, but many times, people will find a couple of use cases from, if we're talking marketing, they'll find marketing and sales. They'll find use cases from companies like Inside Sales or like Persado or Luminoso, or somebody doing something really cool and neat in terms of applying AI to marketing. And they'll say, hey, here's how businesses can do X, Y, Z, or here, and they'll frame it as if it's kind of for anybody who's an entrepreneur. But the fact of the matter is, Logan, most vendor solutions in marketing and sales, and to be honest, in almost everything else as well, are really selling directly to the enterprise. And the reason for that is because those are companies that have large volumes of data. They have huge amounts of money to be able to pay for these complicated integrations. And they often have in-house data science talent that can interface with these vendors and integrate with these vendors and make sure that they can breathe life into the application. So if you look at companies like Persado or like Inside Sales, which I mentioned kind of anecdotally, they are targeting, and I know this for a fact, they're explicitly targeting gigantic enterprise corporations. And so many times people with none of those things I talked about, Logan, no massive sums of money, no huge streams of proprietary data, and no powerful in-house data science talent on staff, will presume that if they read about an AI use case, then they should be realistically evaluating it. But the fact of the matter is, small business does not have to get nervous about the small business next door adopting some cutting-edge AI, because it's wholly inaccessible to most mid-sized businesses, never mind small businesses. So we can get into more detail on that, but certainly here to set the record straight on that one for marketers and sales folks.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Dan, what are some of the thresholds, AI would need to meet before it's really ready for widespread use in small businesses, maybe even in mid-market? What are some of the things that make it not a good fit, other than just the end user business not having money or in-house data scientists?
Yeah, there's a couple factors here. So great question. So the short answer, I'll kind of hit this from two angles, Logan. I'll be quick with you, but if you have any additional questions on these, please let me know. We've thought a lot about this, and again, covered thousands and thousands of vendor companies across these different sectors. And there's reasons that they're not targeting small business. But one of the factors here is that the technology has to basically be consumer level accessible. So small businesses, even companies that are maybe 40, 50 people, in many cases, okay, not all cases, in many cases, aren't necessarily all that much more savvy with data science and machine learning than a person off the street. And so if a technology is kind of a snap, if it's exceedingly easy to use and to understand and to leverage, then small business can use it. If it's basically consumer level simple. Let me give you an example, Logan. You've heard of like a MailChimp, for example?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The easiest, drop dead simple. You could literally give a middle schooler, 4 teaspoons of Robitussin and sit them in front of a computer with MailChimp, and they'll still be able to set up an email campaign. It's like that easy, right?
That's a vivid picture.
Yep, that's about as vivid as it gets. Robitussin middle schoolers. So Robitussin middle schoolers is the absolute lowest bar of kind of technology accessibility. We don't have to be that simple, but Logan, there was a time when marketing automation and sort of these email marketing systems that sort of automated messages dripped out over time, or based on what people clicked, or based on what they filled out in a survey. There was a time, let's say like the late 90s, okay, when that technology was exceedingly cutting edge, very complicated, had to be custom coded and understood, and people had to know how to work with the ISPs and the email providers, and there was no infrastructure to support it. We just needed raw wizard skills to be able to kind of breathe life into these crazy automated systems. But now, Logan, thanks to the fact that the infrastructure of kind of, the email world is in place, and the tools have learned over time to work with small businesses and to work with non-technical people to find interfaces that are so simple to use. Eventually they become accessible. And the same thing can be said for artificial intelligence applications that's, let's say, help with recommending products, or help with prioritizing sales leads, or help with customizing, let's say, email marketing copy, like a company like Persado, who again, right now they're targeting the enterprise. Eventually, these interfaces will be simple enough, clean enough to be able to sort of work with non-technical folks. You won't have to know how to rejigger a neural network. You won't have to, understand the nuances of what's happening with your data infrastructure in order to make it work. At some point, there will be tools that are much more accessible from a UI perspective. And there's one other big dynamic here too, but I just want to make sure that this point is clear for you.
I love it. And your second point, you mentioned you had kind of two specific points on this one, right?
Yeah, I'll hit you with the second one. So the second one is really this technology, AI, is going to become accessible to smaller businesses when it aggregates all the data from larger ones. So let me explain to you what I mean. We talked about a company called Inside Sales. I mean, I could use literally 1,000 examples, but let's just use Inside Sales. So this is basically a CRM that helps prioritize email activity, phone call activity, and kind of follow up for sales staff. So if you're a salesperson, you log into Inside Sales, and they have kind of an engine that helps determine, based on the activities and the propensity to buy and the previous activity and the behavior and the similar lead scores from other leads and whatnot, based on all these various and sundry factors, what activity should you do first? Okay, let's follow up with this person. Let's send this person this email template, and let's do it before noon. Let's make these 2 phone calls before 9 a.m., whatever the case may be, right? It'll prompt salespeople with actions. This is based on aggregating tremendous sums of data from within their company. So inside sales does not sell to a mom and pop bookstore, and they do not sell to a mom and pop car dealership. They sell to very large companies that make huge volumes of sales and have a lot of digital touch points. Now, once a company like Inside Sales, Logan, works with, let's say, 500 or 1,000 of the biggest car dealerships across the United States and Canada, then what they're going to be able to do is they're going to be able to drink in those aggregate patterns of what generally works best for car salesmen. And they may be able to, if they choose to, Logan, this is not going to happen in the next 2 years, but it might happen later on. They may choose to license that kind of recommended lead scoring and follow-up activity kind of dashboard to smaller businesses. So they might be able to tell these smaller businesses, hey, good news. You don't need to have the raw data volumes to feed this system to determine who's going to be most likely to buy a car or not. We've already worked with so many car dealerships that this CRM is going to be a great first start, even without your data, where we can help you with the data and the best practices of all the biggest car dealerships in the United States. Yeah. So for these big firms to distill those best practices, Logan, is not easy. It's going to be gradual, but that's a big transition in marketing and sales.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. The AI and machine learning, the data in is what really fuels it. So it either needs to be your data or it needs to be a broader scope of data that's been being analyzed for some time in order to make it useful. So that makes a lot of sense as that transition could happen. And I think that's a very good example, paints the picture very well for folks. We talked before about folks that should kind of ignore the hype. What marketers in what industries possibly, other than just having the money for it, having the data science, what folks should be thinking about some of these AI solutions that you guys have been analyzing and kind of putting through the ringer as you guys have been doing your analysis?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll break this down as simply as I can. So essentially, we've assessed a big chunk of kind of the AI and marketing landscape, looking at all the folks that are sort of serving mid-sized and large companies with marketing solutions that are sort of predicated on artificial intelligence. People spin out of Stanford or out of MIT or people in Israel. There's a lot of interesting solutions out there and big commonalities, Logan, in terms of industry. So all things being equal, yes, you need a certain amount of data generally. Yes, you need some in-house data science talent almost ubiquitously. Yes, you do need enough profit to actually fund one of these vendor solutions, almost none of which are cheap. But all things being equal, e-commerce, online media, and retail tend to be the spaces where the vendors are focusing their efforts. And that's for two reasons. Number one, it's because there's a lot of digital touch points in a sale in those sectors. And number two, those sectors tend to be more digitally savvy. If you give me, Logan, your average management consulting firm, and you give me your average e-commerce firm, I will tell you with a blindfold on which of them is more likely to have more tech-savvy folks who understand the value of data and understand how to code.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're looking at technical density and digital nativeness, and we're looking at data access. If your process of sale, Logan, so you're asking me who is going to, lowest hanging fruit, all things being equal, who's going to be able to have the most access to sort of marketing tools that are powered by AI in the years ahead? It's the folks with the most digital touch points for their marketing and sales effort. If my sales efforts, Logan, involve driving to someone's office, carrying my briefcase in, shaking hands with the secretary, walking into the person's office, having a coffee with them, kind of shooting the breeze a little bit, coming back home, send them an email. A lot of what I did that day doesn't have a digital footprint. And that doesn't mean it's wrong, Logan. It just means I can't train an algorithm on it. You understand?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So if I sell furniture on the damn internet, then everything I do is trackable, Logan. Every email I send to you and whether you open or not is tracked. Everything that you add to cart and then remove from cart or add to cart and check out with is tracked. Every text message you either open and read or don't respond to is tracked. And so everything on your buyer's journey to spending that darn money is tracked with your account on my online, let's say, furniture sales website. So these businesses that have very robust digital footprints through the totality of the customer journey, these are the people who will be able to leverage AI.
It's story time, and this growth story is about search engine marketing. Okay, so the story revolves around eSub, a project management SaaS company specifically for subcontractors. Even though eSub had incredible customer retention, they struggled with growth. Being a niche service, they discovered that there was little demand expressed for their solutions within search engines. To take on this challenge, eSub hired Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. After refining targeting, pre-qualifying clicks within ad copy, and developing custom landing pages, Directive was able to increase eSub's marketing qualified leads by 71%, while decreasing their cost per lead by 65%. I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
I love it. So we've talked about who can kind of ignore the hype for now, what they should be thinking about as far as when it might be applicable for them. And then we've talked about folks that might be there and what industries and kind of what that looks like. You guys have done, I saw one piece on, analyzing some of the claims and the initial proof points of very specific AI and machine learning vendors. What are some of the things, if folks listening to this are on marketing teams that kind of fit the qualification points that you've mentioned here, and it should be something on their radar, if not now, but for the near future? What are some of the things that you're recommending to folks in analyzing the claims of AI solutions, or looking at the legitimacy before they pull the trigger on obviously a large investment of their marketing and total budget dollars?
It's a great question. Generally speaking, again, as mentioned, without a certain monicum of data science talent and money, there's all those caveats. And I do want to be clear about that. But there is sort of an art here to assessing an AI vendor without being an AI expert yourself. Mm-hmm. And really the low-hanging fruit here in many regards is kind of twofold. And we actually have an article about this. Most of the people that read our material, they're obviously not data science, 250,000 business people, that very few of them have PhDs in AI or even masters in computer science, right? But they have to make big decisions, right? AI experts are just one part of the business ecosystem here. We need people to pull the trigger, people to spend the money, people to know the marketing process. So there's sort of two elements to consider. One of which I'd actually kind of order first is, who have you helped that's like me? To be honest, Logan, many AI vendors have really not that many robust customers that they have any proof of value from. Instead, they have a lot of early pilots. They might have had a friend that worked at eBay or have a friend that worked at Boston Consulting Group. And so they get to say that they've done a pilot with them, or they get to say that they're one of their customers, quote unquote, but they don't have any actual case studies. So there's a lot of sort of aggrandizing moves, not because vendors are bad people, but because they're trying to feed their families, and that just so happens to correlate to misrepresenting the truth sometimes, because life. So to basically ask companies, who like me has garnered the result that I'm looking for from your solution? Unfortunately, and I don't know a way around this, Logan. We got to wait a couple of years to let the solutions flesh out. Most likely, you're quite likely to be a guinea pig for a lot of these companies. Now, if they have a robust set of case studies of firms just like yours with whom they've delivered their solution, then you get to ask really critical questions. Okay, what kind of integration time was required? What kind of data was required on the client side, on the buyer side? What kind of money did this take, sort of soup to nuts from start to finish here, in terms of getting this system up and running? We can start to ask productive questions. But really, thing number one here is, who is like me and wanted a result like the one that I want, and you delivered on it? A lot of the time, Logan, the answer is, ain't nobody. And that's okay. You just have to understand, if you're a company, if you're willing to be a guinea pig and foot that risk and foot that bill, then God bless you. There's nothing wrong with it. You just have to be able to be one of those people that's willing to step on the cutting edge. But for most companies, that's pretty unrealistic. And so it makes sense to flesh out the use cases with bigger, higher moneyed companies who can basically prove that the solution works. So looking for use cases is number one. I can go a bit deeper if you like.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned some very good specific questions that people can ask of these potential vendors. I'd love for you to unpack kind of the second step to this. Is it around further questions that you can ask, or what else should people be doing in their due diligence here?
This is a big point, Logan. A big point is to speak with people like you who've adopted a similar technology. The fact of the matter is, Logan, adapting and adopting an artificial intelligence solution for marketing or for sales, if we're looking at some kind of machine learning based system, these kind of probabilistic, kind of data fed, machine learning oriented solutions are so much different to set up, to use, to fix, to integrate than, let's say, a point of sale software or a CRM or some just done and finished hard coded software. I'm not saying software is easy and AI is hard. I'm not trying to oversimplify here, Logan. But what I am saying is that the process to integrate a machine learning solution often involves a whole different set of IT skills and capabilities and sort of readiness that kind of IT as it has been is not necessarily ready for. So when a company is about to make the plunge and make a serious investment in an AI solution, a huge recommendation on my end is to find someone, maybe it's not a direct competitor, maybe they're even in a different industry, but they've adopted and adapted a very similar kind of solution, whether it's a recommendation engine, whether it's some kind of a e-commerce search application, whatever the case may be. Find someone that's used it and say, hey, what was hard about this? How long did this take you? What did you have to do with your data infrastructure? Did you have to make any new hires to be able to manage this vendor and understand all this wacky data science stuff they're talking about? And really get a sense of what the integration took, because the odds are you are not necessarily prepared for what this process is going to be like. That doesn't mean that your company shouldn't adapt it. It just means you should not by any means presume you know what it's going to be like to bring this thing to life. You don't, for the most part, if you haven't used AI before, machine learning systems before. So find similar buyers and make sure you really grill them about the good, bad, and the ugly, because the preparation from your IT team is going to be very different than if you bought a new email system or a new CRM.
Yeah. And the thing I hear you saying there too, Dan, is digging into other buyers, case studies, actual conversations, not just about the product, but about the process, because we're talking about, newer technology that may not be proven in your specific use case. Like you said, it's not going to be the flip of a switch. So you need to analyze the product and the solution itself, but also the process that it took to get there, what the vendor, what they accomplished, what you need to be prepared for on your side. I love it. This has been a great conversation, Dan. I think our listeners are going to get a ton of value from it. If anybody listening to this, Dan, would like to stay connected with you, ask any follow-up questions, or find some of the content that you guys are putting out from Emerj on this subject, what would be the best way for them to find you guys?
Yeah. So, folks can always reach out just via, Twitter or LinkedIn. So just Dan Faggella. I'm sure I'll give you the social handles for the episode, but it's Faggella. So just Dan Faggella. I'm always responding to, I have literally 3 LinkedIn threads at any given time talking to people in different sectors and industries. And that's kind of how I get my ideas. So LinkedIn is like my ongoing AI chat room, more or less. So if people want to ping me, that's where I am every day. Twitter is cool too, at Dan Faggella. And then we talked today about kind of assessing an AI solution if you're not an expert. That's, I'd say, one of our better articles for folks that are just getting up to speed on tech and really want an understanding of kind of how it could impact their business. So I'll make sure to link to that, as well as kind of our assessment of the AI and marketing landscape. So I'll send along a couple of the articles I think are most helpful for the folks. I'd say check out the show notes, because if you want to learn about the full landscape of where marketing is going to transform and what industries are really going to be hit, I'll make sure that report is linked up in there. But otherwise, just social works just fine.
Awesome. Well, Dan, this has been great. We'll make sure to put those links in the show notes for folks. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with our listeners today.
Cool, Logan. Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. All those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.